Hey guys, this is Shaman.
Hi.
And Jamie here with Harper Therapy, and we're going to start a whole new series for the month of May.
Yes, we are.
And I didn't know when I volunteered to do the month of May that we were going to be talking about something so heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, and I think like any parent, particularly parents of teens, right? Like,
yes.
This is probably one of the scariest things
Absolutely.
that can happen when you're trying to figure out that journey of parenthood, especially if like this is your first teen.
Absolutely.
And this is like, we're talking about self-harm, right?
Self-harming.
And particularly today, like, you know, are you concerned that your child, your teenager is doing this?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and we're going to actually really be talking about specific things for you all to look at and look for, but let me start with some statistics.
Yeah.
Approximately 18.8% of teens report having self-harmed at some point.
That's a big number.
That's a huge number.
Right.
Huge number, almost 20%. Of that percentage, 25.5% are females and 11.6% are males. So it's definitely more prevalent among females, and that's what also we see around the agency is it tends to be the females that we're seeing the self-harm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
we see a lot of teen girls.
yes, a lot of teen girls, they tend to self-harm. The boys tend to have more of anger issues.
Right.
And then from 2009 to 2019, that percentage went from 14% in 2009 to 19% in 2019. So it's on an increase as well.
And I would be curious to see, I bet that's even exponentially higher since COVID, 2020, isolation, you know, online school. I would almost imagine it's even worse now.
I would agree with that. And I would say even as a clinician here at Harper Therapy, I tend to see it almost weekly.
Right.
And I do see a lot of teens and a lot of teen girls, but it is very prevalent.
Right.
And even among groups of girls and everything. So
right. And while it's I mean, this is a huge scary thing as a parent.
it is.
It's not. It's kind of a normal thing.
It's
I mean,
not,
I don't want to
yes.
normalize it.
Right.
But those are pretty big statistics.
Yes, and we want to also touch on the difference between self-harm, non-suicidal self-harm is different than suicidal intent.
Right.
So as a mom of many children, I would...
Wait, how many children?
5.
Right. We got 3.
Yes. And I would actually be alarmed had I not been trained in the mental health field and rush to safeguard them. And so what I'm seeing a lot within the teens that I'm working with is because of the self-harm, the parents don't know what to do. They overreact and they get them Baker acted. And then I am working with them for months around the trauma of the Baker Act, not even the self-harm issue.
Absolutely, because the Baker Act in itself can be so intrusive to a teenager's life who, and largely, like, self-harm is like, they're at that age where they're trying to figure out how to deal with emotions and all of these things, right? You got hormonal changes going on in children, I don't want to say children, young adults, teenagers. There's a lot going on in their brains.
Yes.
And then kind of overcorrecting to say my kid needs to go to a mental hospital for a period of time and be basically incarcerated, right? That's kind of traumatic.
Absolutely. And so our intention with this 4-part series today is we're going to touch on what to look for. Then we're going to look at how to discuss this with your teen. We're also going to look at why teens are self-harming, and then we are going to look at how to lay out a safety plan. And this is what the clinicians do, boots on the ground. If I have a client who is self-harming, we go through and we design a safety plan once we rule out any kind of suicidal intent. And suicidal intent is exactly that. It's not an effort to stop the pain or come out of numbness, which a lot of the time we're seeing in self-harm. It is, I not only don't want to be here, I have a plan and I have the means to carry out a plan. That is the need for Baker acting, not I was cutting my
Right.
legs because I was in so much pain I needed to redirect my thoughts. So they're very different, but as a parent, we can go right into 911
Right.
and be very alarmed. It's very painful as a parent to see your child harming themselves. So
Right.
there's a lot going on. But yeah, so we want to talk about today what to look for with your teens,
Right.
and if you suspect that they may be self-harming. First and foremost, a lot of the time, cutting is a very typical, and it can be a lot on the thigh area.
Thighs, like I've seen underarm.
Thighs
like,
and arms.
Like inconspicuous areas.
Yes, usually they're very well hidden.
Right.
And so though cutting is one, burning is another, bruising, scratching, hair pulling, and biting. And so things like the hair pulling and things aren't always going to be as evident as something like bruising or burning.
Right. Or the marks from cutting.
Or the marks from cutting, yes. And so those are a lot of the behaviors. A lot of the time what you would look for as a parent is you would look for unexplained injuries. Like, how did you hurt yourself? What happened there? Oh, I don't know. I don't remember. Belittling it, blowing it off. Another is wearing long sleeves. And being overly covered, especially if we're in the Florida heat.
When it's 1,000,000 degrees. But,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very common thing with teens. Like, you can't take any of these things by themselves.
No,
right?
absolutely not.
Because teens these days just wear hoodies all the time.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. And it's even like a style thing with a lot of the teens and everything. So
Right.
just because they're wearing a hoodie doesn't mean that they're self-harming. But if you see a change in that behavior and
Yeah.
suddenly they're beginning to wear more of the long sleeves and everything, take note. What I would also recommend is looking at it in connection with other behaviors,
Right.
like frequent isolation and spending time in their room. Most teens.
I was going to say, that sounds like every teen I've ever met.
Exactly. So you don't want to be like, oh, they're spending a
Right.
lot of time in their room. Now I'm thinking they're self-harming. However, if you're seeing it in conjunction with the long sleeves and knowing that there are other things going on that are stressors in their life, that would be one. Another is a change of eating habits, and a lot of these cross over with depressive and anxiety symptoms as well. Low self-esteem, not feeling good about themselves.
Right.
And if you notice any tendency towards impulsivity or aggression. So those would be...
Particularly in guys, aggression, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Not to say girls can't do it, but...
No, and as a general rule, and this is just general, it's by no means a, in all cases whatsoever, you tend to see females turn on themselves and men turn...
Yeah, men lash out,
externally.
women turn
Yes.
internally.
And we don't want to stereotype it at the same time, but
Right.
just to be aware of those things.
Absolutely.
And so if you believe your teen may be self-harming, we would love to help you. We know that is like a scary thing, and it's something that we can have you come in. When we see teens, we work with the family at least once a month in conjunction with working with the teens,
Right.
so that we try to stay as much on the same page as we can and help move you all forward as a unit as well. 211 also is a mental health hotline where they can walk your teen through, and I would actually recommend, if you're alarmed, by calling the 211 first before you even move into any kind of assessing whether there's any kind of suicidal intent there, getting some help that way, because that is a resource that's available.
Absolutely. And you can always call our office
Absolutely.
at 813-434-3639. We would be glad to sit down and talk with you on it. It's, I mean, unfortunately, and the scary part of this is this happens a lot, right? I mean, we see a lot of teens, and a lot of teens are doing self-harm. But it's also something that can really be addressed. Like,
Absolutely.
it's not something, since we see it a lot and we're kind of used to working with it, we see a pretty high, I guess, response rate to like working with families and kids with that. So I think it's good. I'm not trying to normalize it, but I do want to say, before we overreact, like we were talking about a little bit ago, and send our kid to a hospital or something, maybe let a professional kind of work through that.
Absolutely.
You
A
know?
lot of the time, we're going to talk more about the reasons for self-harm. However, a lot of the time it's an unhealthy coping skill.
Absolutely.
It is their way of processing through and dealing with really intense emotions or redirecting intense emotions.
Right.
And so coming at it from that approach and not it necessarily being a life or death situation really helps stabilize
Right.
what your teen is going through, because if we are alarmed and then we come at that teen in that alarm sense, it can exasperate
Yeah, it just
an
it just
already
heightens
intense
it. Right.
situation. That's
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yes.